just so nobody's confused as to where we are this week. This is a place now. Both of us now would have known this as not a playground, but certainly it was a curious place in the village that you could hang out in, or you could go. I think you were particularly fond of the orchard next behind us, but it was definitely a hangout place.
Well, it has great history to it, you know, in the Christian sense of view, because
well, graveyards often do, don't they?
The early Christians, Oak, who was related to the High Kings of Wales.
Who's that? Sorry.
Kilmacanogue, or Killogue is his name, the way you pronounce it in Irish, you know.
Right.
But I think him and his brother arrived in the early 16th century in around Dublin.
Right.
And they walked through forestries and mountains to actually get, and in those days they would have been called cells.
Yes.
The early Christians, whether they be made out of huts or something like that within the area. And then,
and this is the guy that I think when I read that, I think it was 7th century. I know that it was said that he was at St. Kevin's deathbed in 618.
Well, 618 he anointed St. Kevin on his deathbed.
There you go. Right. So
but
that's the year
I'm nearly sure.
So this is the location they feel of his cell. This was
well, the church itself. The church then was built solidly in the 13th century.
Right.
In the 13th century, the Normans would have made everything solid within Ireland, you know, castles, churches, etc.
Sure.
And that was around the 13th
they read the
century.
Little Pigs and they learned their lesson.
Well, they learned their, and then as you see here, this is
the baptismal font.
Baptismal font made out of granite.
Beautiful.
And I think in the early Christian days, to be a Christian, one would have to be christened. So as you can see, this font is outside the church. The church, as you can see.
Right.
So you weren't a Christian until you were baptised.
And then you were allowed to enter
the
house of God.
This was the entry step made out of granite into the church.
Right.
We're talking about the 13th century now.
Right.
And the church would have went right back to about where that tree is.
Okay, the first of the two trees there together.
Yes.
Right. And this is...
and right up into the inside.
Right.
And then when the Latouches came in the 17th century, they took the remaining church that was probably idle or went into disrepair over hundreds of years.
Right.
And they took the remaining stone out of the church. The farm ate their own church around Christ Church around the corner.
This was, I know, I looked at the a list of the people buried here, and I was delighted when I saw Charles Byrne, but then my mum reminded me that this was Protestant church.
No, I call it Christian church.
Okay.
Christian.
So Catholics were buried here too? I thought.
Oh no, it's a mixture of all early Christians, and then when you enter
the 1700s, I think onwards it was.
Well, that's when the divide came in, roughly, and.
But I think it was then it became a graveyard more than, it had been a church, and I don't know if it had been.
Well, I like the word Christian.
Yeah.
The word Christian represents everybody.
I like the word atheist.
Well, that'd be a form of non-believer,
good,
you know.
Good is a way to live. Just be a good person.
But as I say, when you enter an old graveyard, the first thing you'll see is tombs, and they're all 90% made of slate.
Right, Wicklow and is it? I think it's Wicklow slate, and there's a bit of limestone. And
And then on earlier headstones, you would see right to the front where the sun comes up.
But the east, they were facing east.
Because early Christians, the power, and you'll see symbolisms of the sun on headstones to the front, because the power of the sun. It was an early, probably pagan. So they continued it in the Christian world.
Gotcha.
To say you'll see the pictures of the sun on all the headstones, or most of them. So that's a symbolism of power, and the power of the sun and the power, etc., to travel on.
Well, what has been fantastic is that since I and yourself and myself grew up in the 70s here and all that, in the last decade or so, people have taken it upon themselves to tidy this graveyard up immensely. It's a beautiful.
The tidy towns and Lally the butler. Took
great interest. I'll put a link into.
She done great interest over the last 18 years, and several other people of the village.
Back, actually,
And as we approach as we approach, this is kind of called the High Cross.
Okay.
And I reckon it's about the 9th century. I wouldn't be too sure.
Right.
Of and then as it's in books, actually, history books, this. And to the front of it, you have old writing on it. Old Irish Ohm writing, it's called.
Okay.
And
how do you
I
spell
think
the Ohm? Is that OHM or I don't know what do you know?
not particular. It's an
okay.
old
Right.
in old Irish writing.
Okay, early.
And it described basically in graveyards and places like that.
We'll have a
But
look
I
at it.
think as you can observe it, the top of the headstone is gone, the High Cross, and that was probably could have been period of when Cromwell was here, you know.
Okay.
And one doesn't know.
The ISIS shuffle. I think a lot of these guys.
Yes,
like to,
well, there's Cromwellian soldiers buried in the graveyard here.
Right.
Yes,
okay.
up to the back of that.
Can we get a bit closer? I'll just see if I
Yes.
can see any writing. Still, I'm obviously very, very faded
Well,
into its work.
Yeah,
but,
well, it's fairly. You can't actually.
But you can see grooves, and you can
Yeah.
see, you know, the.
But I think that
the
there's
remnants.
two names on it. Ordon was one of them,
Okay.
and I think there was another name, and it was given to. It's a prayer. Ordon or Ardo.
Okay, I thought it might be somebody from Lord of the Rings. It's
No,
a prayer. All right.
Ardo, I think, and there's another name. There's two names described in that particular cross,
Right.
and it's a prayer to Odon or Ardon.
Right.
It was a prayer to him. Now, whether he got it built or not, I don't know. But there's two particular names on that
Right.
particular
Well,
cross.
the names themselves have faded, obviously, but that was the names that were on them. I don't see anything now that is
No,
is
it's not
eligible, but
visible.
that's, right.
It's
that's
old
fantastic.
writing, but
Yeah.
Ardon or Ardo
Okay.
is the name on it. And there's another name. There's two particular names illustrated in that has been found out. And then when about maybe 20 years or more ago,
Yeah.
we dug down 2 or 3 feet into the ground to see could we find the top of the actual
Okay, in case it'd
Christian
been
point
buried
of
after
view.
fall
Yeah,
or-
the
right.
Christian. And what happened was Cromwellian time, all Christian symbolisms had to be taken down and broken. You know what I mean?
Oh,
That was
absolutely,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Well, yeah, that's
so
very
they reckon,
Christian,
but
very
nobody actually knows the particular detail of where it went to, etc., etc.
Right.
And the cross. So no, as I say, they're all. This is Christian. You weren't labelled as your Catholic, Protestant, or whatever.
Well, I'm
but-
guessing politics and religion is full of politics.
Well,
There were times when it
all
wasn't,
village,
entirely a Christian
all villages
operation.
and towns have old places with
Sure.
great history to them. You know,
Sure.
marvelous history to them.
Oh yeah, you know, it's a rich tapestry now, but there's just that recognition that there were times when, you know, one team was not allowing the other team to play on their pitch. There was all that kind of thing.
Well,
I should mention your playground is over there. Your favourite orchard. I think you got many a wonderful treat.
Lovely
just beyond
apples
that
fell
wall.
into our hands.
It's
our
amazing how
hands.
they fell because the wind would blow and they'd come over the wall
But
and into the graveyard.
as
It
I
was
say,
great.
to the back here, I think there's Cromwellian soldiers buried.
Okay, up around here. Yeah. Well, I know that people are you know, it is an open kind of, you know, public space now, and people can explore. And we have, as I said, the great Lally the Butler does wonderful tours. Now we should mention, we did want to kind of let people know that there's amongst all the wonderful people who. Oh yeah.
Here's the earlier. See the symbolism of the sun.
Okay.
Symbolism of the sun is on earlier graves.
Right. That's interesting.
And
And that would have been like a
And-
hangover from
and
the
the way-
pagan times. You're saying it's sort of like it sort of was.
well, it's a symbolism of power. And then over the centuries, Christianity, the graveyards changed because people are buried, and the headstones are facing the sun going down.
Right.
And this graveyard has the sun coming up. You'll
Gotcha.
find that in most graveyards.
Right.
And then over centuries, different periods of time, their point of view changed.
Right.
Whether you're dying coming up with the sun or going down with the sun.
Gotcha.
But as I say, when they illustrated the earlier headstones, here lieth the body of. Here lieth the body of.
Sure. Well, I think the terminologies and all that evolve over time, and you could almost date, even just from a sentence, you could date when, you know, a gravestone was set up. You know, just because of the fact that we do naturally evolve with our, not only our symbolisms, but our actual language evolves.
Well, the language, yes, correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Now we did mention before the cameras rolled, and I was amazed to discover, and I unfortunately can't find a picture of him, but Leo Tolstoy's grandson lived in Delgany for 60 years up till his death in 1981.
In the early 60s, when I was a young boy, Tolstoy and his wife arrived, the Countess,
Right.
to the village. It was a quiet village then, and he done a lot of walking around the village. He talked to the local people in the village. He came to a place called Easton House.
Right. I think it's Pinehaven now, or it was later Pinehaven.
Well, that's just a house built
just
on
a
it.
name, yeah.
They're later years.
Right, yeah.
But Tolstoy himself arrived, and they had a private old house up the top of the Bellevue,
Yes. Yeah.
which is desolate then. And I think it was the early 60s, because I was a young boy at the time.
Right.
And then over the years, I used to go up to get the eggs of a Friday, and I'd meet him and I'd have a chat with the Countess and the Count himself. They were very quiet people. And then later in the 70s, he created a school, a language school.
Right.
And they came from Germany and France to learn different languages. Himself, I think he spoke 6 to 8 different languages.
Amazing.
And he was the great-grandson
Right.
of Tolstoy,
Right.
the powerful Russian people, or family.
Yeah. Well, the great doorstopper book that nobody's actually read, but speaks about.
He was a
it, right.
quite tallish man.
And was it ever brought up that that I don't know if the locals just sort of let him be, or were there like conversations about his great grandfather? I don't know. I wonder if that was something that
No, that was
people just didn't
no,
really
that was
register.
negative. It didn't register. People
Right.
didn't, and he wasn't looking for stripes or stars.
Yeah.
He was a private individual,
Right.
private school kind of. And it'd be the 60s and early 70s when you see all the students from Germany and France arriving, and they'd walk up.
After 81, so it would have been towards the end of his
Yeah,
life then,
yeah.
and, but you wouldn't know where he's buried here. I don't know if I've
I'll
ever
bring
seen-
you to where he's buried.
Okay, we
He's
can have a look
buried,
there.
and when he was buried, he brought the Russian Orthodox Church over
Okay.
to
Where is this?
the
Let's have a
bishops,
look over.
and they were quite weird because they were all in black.
Oh, right.
And
right,
you
of
know, and
course, yeah,
to the
yeah.
villagers, at that time,
Nice, nice.
I just barely remember myself,
So even if it's a sort of vague notion for people to.
Well, I have
to come
distant
and
memories of him.
Right.
He was a quite genteel type of big, large man, and he walked through the village. I think he dropped in. He done his local shopping, the Countess,
Of course, yeah. Well, you
and
have to,
over the years he liked his little drop of vodka.
yeah.
Plenty of vodka, he'd drink his vodka. But as I say, these are on top of this headstone now, as you can see.
Yeah.
That's called an urn,
All right.
which hearts, years ago, people would be buried with the heart
In the urn.
separate, exactly.
Holy moly.
So there's different.
I thought it was just vampires. That was like a given that you'd actually
No,
take the
no.
heart out
Oh,
and
yeah.
sit-
Well,
oh.
it'd be earlier.
Yeah.
And
Now,
here,
which way are we going, by the way, for the? Yeah.
we'll go to. He wanted to be
Right.
buried in Delgany.
Right.
He wanted
that's
to be
kinda
him
sweet.
and the Countess.
Right.
And when they were buried, the only place viable to them and open would be the Christ Church around the corner.
Right.
He took a love to Delgany the years that he was in the actual village. He
Yeah.
took a love to the village.
I'm sure I must have.
And the
met man
people were
at,
more genteel then, because they met
Yeah.
on the roads and talked and
Sure.
had
Oh, they're
conversations.
a
You
aggressive
know?
bunch of snobs now, but back
Ah,
then,
well, not. I wouldn't call them. Everyone's
Well,
in a
you-
hurry now. Everybody's moving too
Sure,
quickly. You
sure.
know.
Well, definitely life is speeded up, even though we're making advances to supposedly give us more free time and make our lives easier. We just actually get busier because we can do more. We actually
Yeah,
start doing more.
Exactly.
It's a shame.
But as I say, old graveyards,
Now,
old
which way are we going
have
up the
great
steps? I don't want to
have-
try and
have-
find a predict.
have great history to them.
Sure.
Marvelous history. And as I say, you'll see the stone here.
Cobblestone.
The cobbles. I reckon they came from the Greystones Harbour area
Right, of
because
course.
they're the same character. You know.
Sure, and you'd head to the sea for good solid, Now, were we going up here, is it? I wasn't sure.
Well, you can.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is step. These paths were made in earlier years. There's all different. I think there's still people around with relations and etc. all in the graveyard. You
You
know.
want me to tase you? Are we going to the Tolstoy grave?
That'd be in the church.
Well, let's keep going. You dirty. You brought me all the way around here.
No,
Which
but
way
I-
is it?
as I
it's in the church, you think?
Yeah, the Protestant church. It's in
Tolstoy is.
Tolstoy. I'll show you that
okay,
grave
right,
now,
right,
and we'll go around and just take that.
Sure. Okay, that's great. Well, it's not in this graveyard then. I didn't realise that. So it is part of the time here in Delgany that he was, as you say, he got a.
Well,
shine
the
into
early
place himself
'60s.
to be
Yeah,
buried here.
yeah. He was. I think as I say, he spoke several languages, and he had a school up there,
Right.
Easton House, It's in private hands now. It's different sections. It's broken into apartments, I think, and private houses.
Right, of course, yes.
But in those days, Delgany, the 60s, would have a gentler pace.
Yeah.
And he got to know people that little bit.
I'm
And
gonna
then
try and source a photograph of the man, because I did go looking, and it's just impossible to. Well, so far, so
well,
impossible.
the history of Tolstoy himself, the family itself.
Yeah.
Tolstoy, why he was successful in writing his book, and the book called
War and Peace.
War and Peace, was because he fitted into the two sections of life in Russia.
Yeah.
They were aristocratics and royals of the time, powerful family, and he himself would mix within the peasants every day.
Like yourself. You
So
kinda mix
yeah,
between the two.
he lived a two standard
Two-tiered
life.
Yeah, but he
So
did
when the
both sides.
revolution broke out by the Bolsheviks,
Yeah.
he none of the sides took any anger against that particular family.
Right.
So
But
he
they
was
were in the middle of well, they're friends to both sides.
exactly.
And,
So
yeah.
he created the Great War and Peace, and he analysed two sides of the coin.
Now we'll say we'll wrap up by just saying that next week I'm hoping that we can get up to the ruins of the wonderful Bellevue Estate, because that's a
Place
phenomenal
called the
stretch.
Octagon. I'll show you
Well,
the
we'll
grave. I'll show you where Tolstoy
Yeah,
is
I'll take
buried.
a picture of you there.
Yeah.
But I'd say for next week I'm going to talk to the current owner of the land up there, but to go up to where the Bellevue Estate used to be, and we'll have a little chat about there, because he
The
has
old
said
house.
before. Stunning
Yeah.
stretch, and obviously everyone knows the Octagon, and many of the features of that particular. The fact that the golf gates are the original gates into the estate.
Yeah.
I forget was it 60 acres or some crazy amount of space.
Right.
But a beautiful
I think it
looking place,
reached
so
out over the Downs Hill
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
no,
Glen of the Downs.
oh, yeah.
That'd be all theirs.
It was like Trump Towers around here.
Yeah, but there was 5 gates to the, and then up the
Right.
top of my road, there was another gate entrance. They were called the Dublin
We're
gates.
giving away the secrets for next week. But
Well,
we'll do all the Bellevue stuff next week. We'll go get a
I'll
shot of
show you
Tolstoy and-
where he's buried.
Yeah,
The great
perfect.
Count Tolstoy.
Beautiful.